Here we go. Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles now. Chase Senior hanging out here with you. And as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. What I want to get into here with today's conversation, I'm going to explain why I think the Eagles need to make a trade to upgrade this roster. And we're going to hone in on one position specifically. Before we do that, another reminder to hit that subscribe button, join the movement, and join the family today. Can we get to 133,000 subscribers with this show? I know it's bold, but we've done it before. We're 538 people away from 133K, and what you get when you lock us in, daily free Eagles coverage. And anytime I'm in front of a camera on a microphone and I'm talking birds, I want our content to be insightful, informative, entertaining, thought-provoking, and I want you to have a voice. If all that sounds good, join the family today. Now, I talked about this a little bit earlier, and obviously that Eagles loss to the Denver Broncos really stung, and it sucked for a variety of reasons. The Eagles were in control for much of that game against a really good team, and what a huge win for that young Broncos team to go on the road. They didn't have the rest advantage. They didn't have the body clock advantage. They were down 17-3, and then they rally for 18 fourth-quarter points, all of them unanswered. And you could tell watching that game that the Broncos are an incredibly well-coached team. Sean Payton on offense, Vance Joseph on defense, both those coaches and coordinators, because they both call plays, made some great in-game adjustments. The Eagles didn't really have any answers. And for that young Broncos team, which is trying to prove that they are among the elite teams in the NFL, that was the type of win that they needed to instill belief in themselves that they can get there or are there. And it's a win that they wanted to get to prove to everybody that they're capable of maybe taking down a Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC and inside that division of the AFC West. And so the Broncos rally for 18 fourth-quarter points. This Eagles offense, once again, could not put together a full 60 minutes, and they collapsed late. They had success early against that Broncos man defense, and then once the Broncos went zone, Philadelphia was very confused and confounded as to what to do on the offensive side of the pill. And because the offense didn't do anything for the last quarter and a half, this defense, which was on the field a lot, needed to continue to get stops, and eventually they just wore down. Philadelphia's offense also 2 of 11 on third downs. And the Eagles, this is really what bothered me the most. So many costly penalties and dumb mistakes. That's not what championship teams do, yet they kept shooting themselves in the foot on Sunday. This offensive line, which has struggled all year with a lot of highly paid players, has been struggling, continues to struggle. They gave up 6 sacks against a Broncos team that is number 1 in the NFL in sacks, quarterback hits, and pressure rate. Saquon Barkley had only 6 carries. You got to find a way to give him more carries in that second half, especially when you're up 17-3. Now, I understand from Kevin Patullo's standpoint that the Broncos loaded the box and it's hard to run against heavy boxes, but the Eagles have shown over the last few years that they wear opponents down throughout the course of a game, and they do that by running the football and playing bully ball with their offensive line. But instead, the Eagles, like they did in the first half, continue with a pass-happy attack. It also kept the Broncos in the game because it gave them more time because the Eagles were going 3 and out and having to punt so often. This Eagles offense being flustered by the zone is a huge problem. Kevin Patullo, Nick Sirianni, and Jalen Hurts, they need to find some answers. And it's really a bummer that the Eagles lost that game because we saw signs of life with this Eagles passing offense. Devontae Smith had the best game of the season for himself. A.J. Brown in that first half, winning routes against the reigning Defensive Player of the Year and Patrick Surtain. We saw some explosive plays downfield. Jalen Hurts looked pretty damn good. And you have the 52-yarder to Devontae Smith in that first half. Hurts made a couple of other really nice throws. To start the third quarter, you hit Saquon on the wheel route for 47 yards. You're thinking the Eagles are going to blow the Broncos out. What an impressive victory this would be. And if some things went in the Eagles' direction, if they converted on some plays, didn't make some dumb mistakes, Hurts could have gone off for 400 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns against one of the top defenses in the NFL, and the conversation would have changed. Instead, the Eagles' offense just pissed down their legs in that second half, and the Eagles' defense was dominating until they got tired and fatigued at the end of the ball game. Now, the good news is that the pass game showed a lot of life. And I think that a lot of these Eagles issues are correctable. Saquon Barkley gets set. If he's set, and obviously it was a questionable call from the official, you convert on a huge fourth down, which gets you close to the red zone. You pick up 30 yards, and you're able to at least get points to maybe take the lead in the ball game. Instead, he doesn't get set. You're penalized, and you have to punt. Tyler Steen, illegal man downfield on the RPO. Would have been a first down. Instead, backs the Eagles up, and they have to punt. All of the pre-snap false start penalties. This is an Eagles offensive line that is highly experienced. This is an Eagles offense that has a lot of the same players, 10 of 11 starters from a team that won the Super Bowl last year. And so a lot of these mistakes are inexcusable, no doubt, but they're also correctable. And I love how the Eagles play with emotion. They play with fire. They play with swagger. That's what Nick Sirianni has instilled in his team. But they have to harness that a little bit because these 15-yard penalties on unsportsmanlike conducts, late hits, and personal foul penalties, they're hurting Philadelphia right now. And yesterday, they came back to bite them. Now, with all of that being said, it's kind of a positive spin on that loss from yesterday. There are existing concerns with this Eagles team that we have to continue to monitor moving forward. This offensive line has been pretty terrible all year, and yesterday against a really good Broncos front, they gave up 6 sacks and they gave up a ton of pressures. It's not sustainable. This run game, non-existent. Saquon Barkley through 5 games has not gotten going on the ground, and he's had the longest run of the season being 17 yards. And I don't think that he's lost a step. I think he's still explosive, still fast, still physical, but this offensive line is missing assignments, another thing that can get corrected, but hasn't, and they're not opening up the big lanes and the big holes for Saquon. And that has really hurt this offense because they really can't do anything at an elite level, and in the process, can't establish an identity. The offense can't play a full 4 quarters. The offense can't beat zone. But what I want to focus on here momentarily, coming up here in a moment, I should say, is the Eagles' lack of pass rush. And this is something that I think has kind of fallen under the radar with the offense struggling that I think is a pretty big, grave concern for Philadelphia. Now, shifting back to offense real quick. 10 of 11 starters for a team that won the Super Bowl last year return for Philadelphia here in 2025. Tyler Steen, the exception, filling in for Mekhi Becton. So there's really not much to fix on offense as far as personnel goes, having to make a trade. But on defense, I think Howie Roseman does need to make a move. The Eagles' pass rush from the edge has been sorely lacking, and I think Philadelphia needs some juice. Now, I like what I've seen from Zadarius Smith, but at this point of his career, you can't be relying on him as an every down pass rusher. He's a good rotational player. I think the Eagles need to go star hunting at the pass rusher spot. Philadelphia ranks 27th in the NFL among 32 teams with 7 sacks on the year. For instance, the Broncos are number 1 in the NFL with 27 sacks. That is a 20-sack difference between the Eagles and the Broncos. When the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl in 2022, they led the NFL with sacks with 70. When they made it to the Super Bowl last year, they had a more consistent pass rush. And obviously, in turn, it makes the back end's job a lot easier. But this is a very concerning list that I put together here. The Eagles' sack leaders. You have Moro Ajomo leading the team with 2 sacks. He plays defensive tackle. Zach Bond is tied with him with 2. He plays linebacker. Zadarius Smith, who the Eagles signed off the street after week 1, leads all edge rushers on this team with 1.5 sacks. He didn't play until the second game. Jordan Davis has a sack. Andrew Makuba has a half sack. That accounts for all of the Eagles' sacks the first 5 games of the year. And you only see 1 edge rusher on this list. A big concern going into 2025 for Howie Roseman in Philadelphia was that the Eagles let Josh Sweat go, edge rusher, let Milton Williams go, defensive tackle, and they were really relying on Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt to continue their ascent with what they did in the playoffs, and for Nolan Smith, what he did in year 2. And obviously Philadelphia missing Brandon Graham as well. So this is a position that I don't see getting that much better. Nolan Smith, when he comes back off of IR, is obviously going to help out Philadelphia, right? And they've missed him the last couple of weeks. But is he going to drastically change this Eagles pass rushing attack? I don't think so. That's why I think Philadelphia needs to make a trade here, and we'll get into that here just around the corner. And I know a lot of people are asking about cornerback too. I just think edge rusher is more important, and I don't look at corner 2 in a way where I'm as concerned about that position as I am with the lack of sack production. And I'll explain more coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's Philadelphia Eagles now brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the game. Right now, you can win big up to 2,000 times your money. And this is such a great app because it's easy to play. You can get your picks in less than 60 seconds. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, all withdrawals, fast, safe, and secure. But PrizePicks has a couple of new features that I want to talk to you about. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, touchdowns. Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on PrizePicks. You can also follow other PrizePicks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click, whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just somebody whose picks you like. Hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on PrizePicks. We have a 3-pick power play for some Monday Night Football. Jags, Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco, more than 29.5 rushing yards. Trevor Lawrence, more than a half passing touchdown. And then Xavier Worthy, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Hop on board. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, to the back half of the show. I have 2 prime targets that I want Howie Roseman to target. Maxx Crosby of the Las Vegas Raiders should demand a trade. This Raiders team is an absolute joke. Maxx Crosby is a player who's elite at his position. He really cares about his craft. And football fans deserve to see a player of this caliber who plays the game the right way with an unbelievable motor, a great arsenal of pass rush moves, to see him play meaningful football. And I think that Maxx Crosby would be the perfect Philadelphia Eagle. How he plays the game and what he values, what he brings to the field, is what Philadelphia is all about. Toughness, grit, swagger, confidence, no fear, and a relentless pursuit of being great. Never settling for just being average. And Maxx Crosby plays the game that way. And I know the Raiders had this new regime and they look at Crosby as a building block and they just gave him a new contract this offseason. But if I'm Maxx Crosby, I am demanding a trade because it's time for him in his late 20s to finally go somewhere where he can play meaningful football and play for a team that has playoff and Super Bowl aspirations. The Raiders are not that, and they're not close to being that. And the price tag for Crosby in a trade, obviously going to be pretty steep, but I have good news for everybody. The Philadelphia Eagles have 10 draft picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. And Howie Roseman said after 53-man roster cutdown day that we love our picks, but we're never shy about using them to acquire a player who can really move the needle for our ball club. And look at these Eagles draft picks here. They have their own first, a second. They have their own third, a third from the Jets, compensatory third. They have 2 fourths, one their own, another compensatory fourth, 5th round pick from the Niners, and a 5th round pick compensatory. And then they have a 6th round pick from the Vikings. They have the draft ammunition to make a trade for a player like Maxx Crosby. And if you're the Raiders and you want to rebuild and reset the organization a little bit, you could trade away a star player, get some draft picks back, and that's a way for you to start rebuilding with some young, affordable draft assets. Can you imagine Maxx Crosby on this defensive line alongside Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ajomo, and the young edge rushers in Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt? This would go from being an Eagles team that has 7 sacks this year, which is 27th in the NFL, to being one of the more feared defensive fronts in the National Football League. Crosby once again having a terrific year. 2 weeks ago, Caleb Williams, and I'm not a big Caleb guy, had said that Crosby is the best player he's ever played against in his life. And it's easy to see that because he can dominate and take over games by himself. And I think it's so impressive that Caleb said that because he goes up against some upper echelon players, yet Crosby is the one who's really stood out. And he doesn't have a ton of help along that defensive line, yet has an overall PFF grade of 84.6, a run defense grade of 78.6, a pass rush grade of 76.8, 2 sacks, and 16 pressures with 4 hits. Another player who I would like Howie Roseman to try to acquire is Trey Hendrickson of the Cincinnati Bengals. And an Eagles trade for Trey Hendrickson makes a lot of sense when you think of it in this way. The Cincinnati Bengals showed us what they think of the player and what their plans are for the future. He wanted to stay with Cincinnati. They didn't give him a contract extension. Instead, they paid their 2 receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. All they did was up his pay for 2025, but didn't give him a contract beyond this year. Cincinnati has now lost 3 straight games, all in ugly fashion. Joe Burrow is out until December. Jake Browning stinks. There's no way they're going to continue to be a playoff team. And so they become a bona fide seller as we look ahead to the deadline. As we know, Howie Roseman really values elite edge rushers. And because the Eagles would be making this trade in season, I don't think the trade price would be that crazy compared to if the Eagles made this trade during the offseason when his value was a little bit higher because of the sense of urgency and the timing of it. And Hendrickson in 2025 also having a really good year like Maxx Crosby. Overall PFF grade of 78.3. That ranks 24th among 165 pass rushers going into week 5. Obviously, one more game to happen in week 5. His pass rush grade, 81.8, 16th. 19 pressures, 11th. 5 quarterback hits, 7th. And also has 2 sacks. So when you think about this Eagles team right now, and you think about this Eagles roster, on offense, you don't need a lot of new personnel. Players have to play better. They need to execute better. And Kevin Patullo needs to do a better job with the scheme and calling plays. On defense, though, the defense has played pretty well. But they clearly need some pass rushing juice, which is why I think Hendrickson and Crosby would be unbelievable additions. And it fits the billing of what Howie Roseman likes to do. Always be aggressive and put your nuts on the floor. And how Vic Fangio has called the defense so far this year, you can tell he's kind of begging for a pass rusher. He has not been a DC throughout his career who's blitzed a lot. This year, he's had to blitz a lot because he knows that the Eagles aren't good enough up front as far as generating a pass rush. Crosby and Hendrickson help in that area. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more elite Eagles coverage right here on YouTube. It's Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr. Thank you so much for watching.